Hello, I'm Captain Reese Balmer from Griffin Bay Adventures, and I'm a delivery captain and sailing instructor who's been working in the Northwest for over 20 years, going on 25, and started a series interviewing captains and sailors in the hopes that we can learn from each other, learn from each other's successes, and perhaps learn from each other's mistakes. This next interview is with a delivery captain named Ray McCormack, who was just on a boat that went down in Mexico, and he joins us here to share the story. I hope that we can learn from this misadventure, and I hope that we can be honest with ourselves and each other about our mistakes so that we can learn from them. Sailing is a challenging and sometimes dangerous thing. So, as the captains of our vessels, we have a obligation to continually improve and learn wherever we can. So I hope this and coming interviews will help you in your watery adventures. Okay, here we go.
You want to start at the very beginning?
Yeah, let's start at the very beginning. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Ray McCormack. I'm a 200-ton captain, 100-ton-year coastal. Been approved for my 500-ton-year coastal, and be applying sometime in the next few months with my 1,600-ton inland and 500. I'll have my 500-ton-year coastal. Also have my STCW and advanced firefighting certificates. I've done the RYA Yachtmaster training. I've yet to take the practicals on that. And I'm a full-fledged nauticed.org instructor. So yeah, basically the sinking of Boat Bum Gal was a very unfortunate event. I feel really bad for Sandra that she lost all of her possessions, and yeah, it's good to see that she's trying to get back on the water. She has another boat she's looking at.
Good.
But basically what happened was it was around October 29th, and Sandra had posted on Facebook that she lost one of her crew. I messaged her via the Facebook messaging system about, that I would be interested in doing it. I had heard this might have been the last Baja from Patsy.
Okay.
Because the Mexican Navy had taken over the tip process, and they didn't know how it was going to go this year.
What's the tip process?
That's basically the cruising permit for Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a 10-year permit, and it's when you get it, you need to make sure you cancel it if you get rid of the boat or you leave the country. Otherwise, it gets stuck there, as we found out with the Sunseeker when we took it down to Ensenada. But so October 30th in the morning, I flew down. Sandra picked me up at the airport. She took me down to the Coronado area at the boat ramp where there was a little dinghy with a little motor on it. And we loaded ourselves in that and went out to the boat. It was a Nicholson 37, like a 1970s version, center cockpit. The aft cabin was full of tools and extra parts. Yeah, she was definitely weighted on her stern. I could tell pulling up to her, she was like that.
So just to be clear here, there's this Baja rally. A bunch of cruisers go down to Mexico in the winter or for the winter. And there is a Facebook group where they coordinate the events and different vessels can communicate. And the owner of this boat had lost some crew, so she posted, and you responded to that. And were being brought on you were volunteering your experience, not being brought on as a delivery captain like you normally are on.
Right. Although we did have the conversation on the phone, I said, listen, I hold my merchant marine license. So if we get in trouble, I'm the one that becomes in command, basically.
Right.
And I was the most experienced person on the boat, for sure.
Right.
She had never really been offshore. Brian had never really been offshore. So this was all kind of new to them. and I was the most experienced person on the boat.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was not getting paid as a
Right.
captain.
You're volunteering. Yeah. Okay. So you're taking the dinghy out to the boat. Um,
Yeah, and I get to the boat and I instantly notice, I have a really cool ability that when I step on a boat, I kind of know it's how it's been maintained, and a little bit about, how kind of seaworthy she is. The boat appeared that she was older for sure. The rigging looked old, the lines looked old, the sails looked old. Yeah, the windlass wasn't working, so we had to use the spinnaker halyard to pull the anchor up. Yeah, the one with all the chain on it. It was quite heavy. Um, and the engine quit too when we were pulling the anchor up, and so I had to bleed some injectors and get the engine going again, basically.
I see.
So yeah, that was, this is all playing in the back of my mind, right, about whether we should actually go or not.
Right.
But I kind of went with it. And in hindsight, yeah, I should have pulled the plug almost right away.
And
But
and
yeah,
if you
we
had
make we make decisions as captains, right? So
yeah.
yeah, so we went to the dock, we provisioned the boat. Brian came down, we put some ice on the boat, some dry ice, some water, extra water. And yeah, we tried to take off in the evening. And
Okay. And about
yeah,
how long is this first leg so everybody can kind of understand what's
it's about 2 days.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's about 2 days. Um, this would have been October 30th. So the fleet had left earlier in the day and we were leaving in the evening. So we were a little behind the fleet. Got about 2 or 3 hours outside of the entrance of San Diego Bay, and basically the voltage on the 12-volt bank started to just fall off completely. Instruments were shutting down. Yeah, autopilot was shutting down. So basically Sandra was sleeping and I made the call. I said, we just need to turn around and go back at this point, see if we can address it. And so we turned around and went back to San Diego, and the next morning got up and proceeded to take the alternator apart, and found out that the feed post for the electrical charging wire was all corroded.
Yeah.
So we cleaned that up. We put a new wire on. So when he put that all back together, I had him yank on the wires, and one of the wires came out of the terminal. So we put a new wire on, and yeah, we were able to get charging again. So later that day, we tried to take off again. So this was October 31st. We got out of there in the late afternoon. Everything went fairly well overnight going into the next day. And then it was the next evening, so 24 hours later, that I decided to take a nap because we were going to be coming into Turtle Bay probably I figured about 2 or 3 in the morning on November 2nd. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went down to lay down, and this was right after we got the boat basically on the inside of Cedrus Island. And I was awakened by the boat heeling over. So I got up.
Oh,
And
no,
yeah, there was
bump or anything like that. It was just
just the boat heeling over.
versus the wind.
Yeah, I'm pretty good about that. Yeah, I can tell when a boat changes tack or
Yeah.
inadvertent jives, right? We know that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got up and I was like, I knew that the wind had picked up because that's something that will heel a boat over like that. And sure enough, there was an Asiatic breeze. It was blowing about 23 to 25 miles per hour.
So blowing off the shore here.
Yes, off the shore. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So I saw that, I was concerned about the rig. We had already broken the boom vang. I was concerned about the running rigging, the standing rigging, the sails. In the back of my mind, I knew that the next 2 legs, which would be from Turtle Bay to Baja St. Maria, and then Baja St. Maria to Cabo, were going to be very windy.
Yeah.
And as you go down the coast, there's less and less resources. So Turtle Bay has a little bit of stuff there. Baja St. Maria has nothing. There's some Mexican people that come into Baja St. Maria to throw the party and stuff, but otherwise there's kind of nothing there. There's a couple shacks. That's about it. And then Cabo is full of resources, obviously.
Right.
So the key is being able to get to Cabo, right?
Yeah.
And that was in the back of my mind. So I made the decision at that time, given my knowledge and experience, to run the boat closer to shore. I picked a 10-meter depth line is what I did.
So reducing the fetch for any chop that way, and maybe reducing some of the wind.
That's correct. Yeah. And it worked. There was less wind there for sure. Yeah, and so we were cruising along. We were coming to the entrance of Turtle Bay, and then we started having some issues with voltage again, 12-volt voltage.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and just to preface this a little bit, there was also an issue with the autopilot that I found out about after we had left the first time, and that was that when the voltage drops, it can take like a 30-degree turn inadvertently, right, and turn the boat without even knowing it, because there's no number that displays on this autopilot. It's just a hit auto and it steers a course, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the other thing that happens is that when you try to go into standby, it takes about 20 to 25 seconds for the hydraulics to let go. It's a hydraulic steering system, and so there's this delay before you can actually turn the wheel.
Interesting.
Okay. So back to we're coming into Turtle Bay. The breeze has come down, and we were having a voltage drop problem. And so we basically used an EU 2000 generator on deck with a shore power cord to try to be able to run the charger to charge the batteries. But then we were having AC issues, like breakers were breaking or something. And so then they dragged out an extension cord, and we run an extension cord from the generator straight to the charger, which had a male plug on it. It was plugged into a receptacle. Yeah, and so there was a lot of activity going on deck, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's dark. Yeah, I did not notice if the autopilot might have made a turn. I don't know if it did or not. I just know that one of the things I usually do when I change my course like that is I'll drag my route over my waypoints so that it at least lines up with where we're going. Mm-hmm. The other problem I had was that Coastal Explorer. I was working with Rose Point before I came on that trip, and my laptop was not laying down tracks. It was laying down the tracks, but it wouldn't show them on the screen, which usually it does.
Right? How does it lay it down but not show it?
It's like breadcrumbs, right? So when you turn on the track feature in Coastal Explorer, it leaves a track behind the boat.
Yeah, but
so if the boat takes a turn, you would see a turn in your track.
But
right?
You said that it was laying it down, but it wasn't showing it. I don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, if you went into, I don't know if you've ever used Coastal Explorer, but if you go into Coastal Explorer and you click on your log and then you hit tracks, the tracks are actually there. They're being recorded, but they're not being displayed on the screen.
I see.
Yeah. I just got a new laptop, and it lays down the tracks just fine. It did it all the way to Hawaii
I see.
from LA.
So the way I can see that the part of the problem is you've got this like small view, you're zoomed in, right, and you're losing reference to the general shoreline. And
that's correct. And I lost all reference. I was zoomed in on my sea maps, which my sea maps had taken me into Panama. It had taken me into Costa Rica, right? All these places, and it had done Mexico with me several times. The sea map charts that I have in Coastal Explorer are pretty good. Yeah, they're pretty good. Now, still, as we know, there's the recommendations by the Baja fleet as well as cruising guides that when you come into Turtle Bay, stay in the center. And I knew this. Coming into Turtle Bay. I'd been in there several times. Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically, moving forward after trying to resolve all the charging issues, and the boat might have taken a turn, it might have not. But Brian, who was standing up at the shrouds on the starboard side, said, "Ray, do you see those rocks?" And I peered around the Dodger and I said, "Oh shit." And first thing I did was I hit standby, and the wheel wouldn't move, right? So then I went for the gear shifter to try to slam it in reverse, and we bumped and hit a rock.
Yeah.
And as we bumped, the boat kind of skipped over. It was high tide, and she laid over on her port side on a rock, basically.
Yeah.
She spent about the next couple minutes with every swell that came from behind us. She would flip over from starboard to port, Yeah, and then I saw cabinetry started moving down below, and water was coming in. So Brian was on his handheld hailing a mayday. But we were very close to the boats anchored up in Turtle Bay, and so yeah, people were listening to us at this point.
Oh, I see.
Um, yeah, and I went forward and or well, basically, so yeah, I was trying to back the boat off. Eventually, the engine died because of the water coming in the boat, probably.
Yeah.
The tide, it was high tide, and the tide ended up flipping and then pushing us off the rocks. And so
Okay.
the boat righted itself and started just squatting in the water. At that time, I told Brian to go get the motor on the dinghy and get the dinghy ready. I went forward and got the anchor, which I had set up basically a fortress anchor with some chain and rode for the rest of the trip because the windlass wasn't working,
Right.
and threw that off the front of the boat and anchored the boat in about 40 feet of water.
Because now
Yeah.
they're being blown out to sea.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we basically when the rail was about 4 inches above the water, I was like, okay, it's time to go. And we all jumped in the dinghy, and then we worked our way around the boat up to the bow. Yeah, she was definitely stern heavy because of all the tools and the everything that was in that aft cabin.
Mhm.
So she went down stern first, and then yeah, her bow just slipped under the water.
Yeah.
We motored for a couple minutes, headed towards the entrance to Turtle Bay, and a panga with fishermen showed up and picked us up, and then took us the rest of the way to the pier. We were able to stay in a hotel that night, and then I think the next day the Mexican Navy came and took pictures of our driver's license and cleared us, basically said we could go back home. And yeah, it was a long, long journey the next day to get all the way to Loretto, and then I jumped on a flight, a 737 the next day, basically to get home.
Yeah.
So key learnings, um, for one, yeah, I need to be better about saying no. I need to be better about that. I've delivered some questionable boats. There's no doubt about it. I do this for a living. I live check to check, so, and I feel that I've been fairly successful. There's some people that feel I'm not successful, and that's their opinions. And it can appear like that from the things that have happened in the past, for sure. But I need to be better about saying no. And this boat definitely, particularly when we went back that first time because of the voltage issues, I should have just said, you know what, this boat's not ready to go. I'll help you make a list of things to address, and I'm going to fly home, and you can go do that. And if you want me to come back, I'll come back and help you.
Yeah.
That's what I should have done. Okay. Yeah, I should have been more diligent about that autopilot. Yeah, I mean, with what I'd seen about it, I should have been a little bit more cautious about, particularly when I got close to the shore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and relying on my chart plotter when it was not working. I mean, that was just complacency on my part, right? That laptop, has done great. Coastal Explorer's done great for me. I've done lots of trips up into Alaska and back with that thing, and in Central America and up and down the coast, and to Hawaii and back, and it's always been flawless. It just and yeah, the recommendations by cruising guides and the Baja Ha Fleet about staying in the center of Turtle Bay, that is something that definitely should be considered when coming in and out of that bay. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
And so the boat had no plotter. I mean, you're just using your laptop.
Well, it had this little chart plotter, but like it didn't even have maps for Mexico, right? So we were depending on my laptop. Yeah.
I see. I see. So redundancy there does help.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. As mariners, right? That's one of the things that we should be adhered to is you never depend on any one source.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I have not delivered as many boats as you have for sure, but I have had to become more and more rigorous about both choosing boats that I think are seaworthy enough for their particular passages, and and also working at getting more clear with boat owners about what my role on the boat is, and
Mhm,
I will
mhm.
do this if this. And I've had to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations when what the boat was supposed to be is no longer the case anymore. And when that happens, then my side of the agreement has to change. And it's hard because you have a bit of a previous investment trap there. You know, you've kind of committed to doing this job based on this information, and once that you start to get more information, or like the uh, less things working on the boat, then you have to be comfortable with changing that plan. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the go no go thing is such a hard, I mean, go that's at the very beginning in a way. Like when you turn back around, it could have just left the boat then. I'm sure you've gone over this in your head a bunch of
Oh
times.
God, yeah. There's so much gut feeling and intuition that goes into it.
Right. And
Like
how,
as an example, the Baltic 38 last November that I brought from Hawaii to, well, we ended up in Nia Bay, right? I don't know if you followed that. But yeah, last November, Mark Miller came. That was his first ocean crossing, right? And we had two Canadians on board. And yeah, we sailed that boat basically in the Pineapple Express all the way to the Straits of Juan de Fuca.
nice.
And, I should have, when we were in Hawaii, and I had told that owner, I said, we should only be in Hawaii for about 3 days. Fuel, provision, get used to the boat, leave. Right?
Yeah.
He kept us there for 11 days, which pushed us farther into November, which made me miss Thanksgiving. Right? And yeah. And the invoice blew up. Right? Because yeah, I charged lay days and I got to buy food for the crew, and I had to get the bottom scrubbed, and I had to go to customs and pay to bring a sail on the boat when he had the boat there for 4 months. He could have done all this stuff, and he didn't. And I had a feeling that he was going to be a cheap asshole. Excuse my language,
Yeah.
but he was. Yeah, and I found that out in court when I lost my court case up in Vancouver. Yeah, and I took a $10,000 loss on that delivery.
Yeah. Yikes. Yeah. So, you know, I don't follow your blog. I hear about bits, or I'll read little bits here and there from your adventures, and I do see there's a lot of the, what they call it, the Monday morning quarterback uh, that goes on. But I have a little different perspective because I deliver boats as well, so I know what it's like dealing with a customer.
Oh
And
yeah.
customers hired a delivery captain to safely move their boat for them, with them. but but that's what they've asked for, it to be done safely. And when you see some sign that it's not safe, you have to be able to pull the plug and end the passage. It's different situation, this story, because you were volunteering, and you probably would have made some different decisions if you had been there in a professional capacity. And I can kind of imagine where I might have been in a similar situation. um, and I think also I relate to getting on not so seaworthy boats. When I first started delivering boats, those are the only deliveries that I got. So I
Yeah,
had to
right.
make those work, and I tried to get out of the mentality of this is what you do. You fix the boat to move the boat, and move away from that into, no, it's picking seaworthy boats and good customers, and making yourself available to those people and saying no.
Yeah, and there's a lot of thought in the industry that, by raising your rates, basically, right? Raise your rates and it gets rid of the riffraff, right? And that's probably where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm up in my tonnage. I'm going to be a four-figure captain pretty soon per day,
Yeah.
and that's the rate I'm going to run with. Now, I may not get a lot of deliveries, but I'll get a little bit of work here and there, and maybe even some private work, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that before too. Raise the rate, but it's even if you could make an argument that because someone's paying you more, they expect you to do more, to be doing repairs underway. I think it still just comes back to the responsibility to be able to say no, and maybe managing those expectations ahead of time with that conversation, with that contract, to be it like this is this is our clear expectations. You're providing the seaworthy boat and you're signing off on that, and I'm going to be able to move it from here to here. But if we find that things start breaking and there are things that you don't know about as the owner, then we have to change the plan.
That's right. And I do run a contract. I have a 9-page contract, and it has language in there just states that. It says, at me as the captain, if I find that the boat is unseaworthy at some point, I have the right to leave it wherever I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, most of the time I work with owners, and I don't like leave the boat, right? Most of the time I try to work with the owners and I like to finish the delivery. I like to do that. And I tried to do that with the Canadian one. Mark and I spent all day, the day after Thanksgiving, trying to get the engine running, and we couldn't get it running because he had this weird fuel system. It was, the filter was mounted in a location where you couldn't even inspect the O-ring on it. And yeah, it would suck air, and yeah, and he had material in the jerry cans that basically clogged the pickup. And so we had all sorts of problems trying to get the boat running. And he finally called me and said, you know what? Thank you for getting my boat to the West Coast. You and your crew can go home. I'll come get the boat. And he lied in court and said he didn't say that.
God.
Yeah, but I agree that it's a very sketchy, difficult thing that we do. Yeah, getting on boats that are unknown entities, working with people we don't know. It makes the private stuff actually seem pretty easy, right? When you get a boat and you actually have a known entity that you can work with, that's kind of the way it goes. But for sure, I think that it can make an individual a better captain when, we're pretty good at fixing issues, right? We get experience with engines and electronics and refrigeration and pumps and rigging and just lots of different situations that cruisers would love to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder too, would the owner of the boat, what would they have done had you not been on the boat? I wonder. She was a crew of 2 and was looking for a third. Wonder what would have happened if they had these problems. Would you just turn back around and got things repaired? That's an interesting one. Also, if there wasn't the rally and the perceived safety in numbers of joining a rally and going down there rather than going down there alone, would the boat be in as poor shape? That's where my brain goes a little bit with these rallies is who are you going to be expected to save out there, and who are the people that have no place being out there. I had a
yeah, and if you but like the Baja, if they run an event like that, they're going to get people like that. It's just inherent. Yeah, it's inherently going to happen. You even get people who don't even pay the fee that join with the rally, right? Because they can't even afford it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your candor. We talked a little bit about this ahead of time of like taking that time to reflect after, we've all made mistakes on the water, and either do we go to our log and make some really clear notes about what we could have done differently, or do we have a cocktail? And
right.
I think that it's important to, as boaters and especially as captains, to take that time to reflect on our mistakes so that we don't make them again.
Yeah, and there's the expectation, right, that as a captain you can never know it all.
Yeah,
you learn something new every time you go on the water. And that's totally true for me. Every time I step on a boat and I go on the water, I learn something new.
absolutely. And that's part of why it's rewarding, and the challenge there too. But I think it's when we're on the boat in a professional capacity, we certainly have an obligation to be. I actually, truth be told, my own boats, there will be eccentricities to some of the systems that I will be comfortable with because I know everything else on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so with deliveries. I have a little list in my mind and on paper that shows the pros and cons, and I keep track of those things. They may be totally unrelated systems, but they are taking your attention. Like in this case, it was your attention being taken um, off the navigation because of the systems on the boat failing that resulted in the sinking of the boat.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You know, and the decision to go close to shore, right? And that was just the decision I made based on my experience and my knowledge
that was the
and the forecast I had saw, right? I was thinking about the forecast I saw, which was that we needed to be able to sail the boat down to Baja St. Maria and then to Cabo.
right, but
And what I was seeing in front of me, I was like, oh man, is this going to make it?
yeah, so but that was still connected to the vessel.
Yes.
The decision of where you put the boat to be gentle on the rig was the result of um, uh, an unsound rigging.
Yes. Right.
So
Right.
it
Right.
does connect back to the boat, and then the question maybe there is, okay, this boat's in San Diego where these things can get done fairly easily, but going to Cabo is going to be a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it just comes back to the seaworthiness of your vessel and making sure that you aren't committed to going beyond the safety of the trip.
Right. Right.
And like you were saying too before about your instincts, I think these things are all taught to you. These things are all talking to you from your experience, and it might not be explicitly clear, but you got a bad feeling, and you got to learn how to trust those things and be okay with turning around or not casting off. It's easier said than done for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle
Totally.
with a
Totally.
bunch. And is there going to be any legal ramifications? I mean, you weren't there hired as a captain, but as a captain, you have this responsibility for the vessel and the crew that you can't bow out of. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. It's I'm not an expert on the merchant marine laws and systems, but in my brief workings with the Coast Guard, basically, it's my understanding that merchant marine holders can get 3 marks on their license, and then you lose your license for life.
Okay.
Okay. And the way that those marks happen, for sure, one of them is if you're the captain or the master of a COI vessel and someone gets hurt or dies, there will be an investigation and you could get a mark on your ticket for that.
Yeah.
If you are hired as the captain on a boat, this could be an uninspected or a COI vessel, and someone does die, you're going to get a mark. Okay. If someone gets injured, or when the Coast Guard does an inspection and they find something like you have drugs or guns on board, yeah, you're going to go. All these, by the way, you have to go to court. So they would call you to court basically before they give you these marks. But yeah, you could get a mark from that. Okay. This boat was an uninspected vessel. I was not hired as the master. And it was in what I coin international waters. It was not in U.S. waters.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that they've told me that they've posted like on some of the forums and stuff that they've called the Coast Guard and reported me.
Hmm.
right? And they're all trying to they're trying to put a petition together to yank my license, right? I think they've got a really tough battle to do that. I don't think the Coast Guard works in that way. They don't really have that capacity to, I mean, the fact is nobody got hurt, nobody died,
Yeah.
right, in the sinking of the boat bum gal.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and yeah, I made some bad decisions. I admit it. I admit it. But
Yeah.
I'm willing to move on. I mean, I just took that Sunseeker to Hawaii and we did fine with that. I mean, the owner was happy. I just put an estimate to take a Jeanneau 44 from San Diego to Hawaii. I might be flying out to San Diego and do that. Really, I mean, I just heard about this, so I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But I mean, that's what I do is I continue, I move on, and I look forward to my next opportunities.
Right.
And I learn from what I've done in the past.
Right. Yeah, and hopefully too we can learn a little bit from each other's misadventures. That's my hope. I share my passages on my blog with that hope in mind. Of course, it's easy to play the Monday morning quarterback, and
Mm-hmm.
if I was there, I would do this kind of a thing. Well, I'm glad that we got a chance to talk. I appreciate your candor, and I appreciate just how transparent you are with your blog and sharing your experiences. And I know that it's a lot of people enjoy it. So
Yeah. No, and the reason I do it is to share, share things that happen out on the water, which can happen to anybody.
yeah,
Yeah, that stuff can happen to anybody. I mean, a captain or not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel like in the maritime world, a lot of things don't get shared. There are events that we all hear about. Someone loses their life at a week-long regatta or something like this, and the
Yeah.
information is kind of scant or just sort of not there. Nobody wants to talk
Yeah.
about things. And
Well, yet you have to pay the money and go to the Safety at Sea seminar from World Sailing, right?
yeah,
Which, yeah, I've done it 3 times. I've taken the Safety at Sea seminar. Um, you know, um, there's some guys up in Vancouver. They want me to come sail on their boat in the Vic Maui or Pack Cup. No, is it Transpac or Pack Cups? I think it's one of the big races.
yeah,
And he's like, you got to get your Safety at Sea seminar, and I'm like, ah, shit, really? I mean, God, I spend money on my STCW. Come on. How many times do I have to do that Safety at Sea seminar when I'm a captain and I cross oceans and I go up and down the coast? And can't they just, I've talked to World Sailing and I'm like, can't you guys just put together like a quick 4-hour video on the new technologies and the key learnings of what's happened in the last 5 years?
yeah,
Right. And then I would watch that and I could take a quick test even if you want me to.
yeah, yeah,
Right. But do I really have to go to the 2-day seminar and sit down for 2 days
yeah,
when I've already flipped a raft and I've already jumped in the water with an immersion suit and I've already jumped in the water with my life raft or
yeah,
my inflatable? I've done all that. I mean, yeah, they need to change their paradigm a little bit. I think they should accept STCWs. That's for sure.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
as a subset of Safety at Sea, but
yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
whole other conversation.
Well, where can people go to follow your blog?
Well, I had a website for a while, but my domain expired and I haven't renewed it yet. Yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm just posting to Facebook and,
Facebook.
yeah, people can follow me on Facebook. My wife says I do it too much, and it's obvious I do it too much because the people on Sailing Anarchy rip me apart pretty much over stuff that's happened over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I don't really follow those guys anymore, but
I know. I stopped using them a long time ago. Yeah, it's just the people that on Sailing Anarchy I don't know. I don't even know what kind of people they really are.
yes, well, the anonymity that we can get with our online trolling is not great for our behavior for sure. Well, thanks so much for taking this time. Fair seas. So
Yeah.
yeah,
To you
good
too,
luck.
man.
Yeah, good luck on this LA to Hawaii gig. I know the same feeling of paycheck to paycheck.
Oh God, yeah. It's feast or famine pretty much. Yeah.
It makes it harder saying no to these jobs that are questionable.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
things like
Yeah. All we can do is just kind of, as you know, we just hang in there and we look for that next opportunity.
yeah,
Yeah, and then we try to be judicious about, I mean, I do all sorts of stuff like, if someone buys a boat without a survey in the last 3 years, then I'm like, okay, you need to fly me in and I'm going to do a sea trial, like an overnight sea trial. And I'm going to take the boat out and I'm going to try to break stuff on it is what I'm going to do. And so there's some things I've done that try to mitigate, I mean, if Sandra had hired me to deliver the boat to La Paz, right? And she contacted me and there was no survey and she did my whole estimate and contract process, I'd be like, okay, I got to come down and do a sea trial on the boat.
yeah,
I'm going to take it to Catalina Island and back,
right,
right? Try to break stuff. And what would have came out of that was your boat's not ready to go to La Paz.
yeah,
So if I'd done my normal processes, this boat never really would have ever left the dock for
yeah,
Mexico,
yeah,
but it I do sometimes do things like that where I've helped people out with their boats. I've like Brad just bought a boat, right? And
yeah,
I was up there for 3 days. Yeah, we put in double ray cores and and I looked at his batteries and I'm like, oh, you need to replace the start battery, Brad.
yeah,
And so yeah, we're gonna hopefully get that boat down the coast here in a few weeks. He's got to get it out of Everett by January, end of
yeah.
January.
We've been talking a little bit. You're a good guy.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Appreciate your time again, and yeah, good luck on this next gig.
Excellent. Yeah, well, let's stay in touch, man.
Okay. Well, thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.